Good day, everyone, as we begin on our discussion pertinent to the historical perspectives and key concepts of group process and development. I invite you to frame this topic not merely as theory but as foundational knowledge for your board examination and, more importantly, for your future role as professional counselor. So, as master students preparing for board examination, your task is not merely not to memorize models, but to conceptualize group behavior critically. You need to ask yourself what process is happening beneath the surface. What developmental stage explains the group's behavior, and what leadership response is theoretically sound and ethically appropriate. So today's session will revisit the historical roots of group work and connect them to the essential concepts now that you need to master. So by the end of this discussion, you should be able to trace the evolution of group theory and apply them to the key processes, not to case-based scenarios. Let us begin first, no, by answering a very basic but foundational question. What does it take to make a group? For any collection of people to be considered a group in the psychological and sociological sense, certain social criteria must be present. These criteria are essential for understanding group formation, cohesion meaning sense of unity among group members, and functioning, especially in the context of counseling and group facilitation. First, no, there must be two or more people. This may seem not so obvious, but it's important. A single individual does not constitute a group. However, merely placing individuals in the same room does not automatically make them a group either. For example, students waiting in line at a registrar's office are not necessarily a group. They are simply an aggregate of individuals. So, board examination tip: if the situation describes people who are physically present, not together, but not interacting or connected, that is not yet a functioning group. Second, there must be an interaction. Interaction means communication, exchange of ideas, influence, and responsiveness. Members affect one another. Example, in counseling groups, this includes verbal sharing, or nonverbal cues or nonverbal gestures, feedback, emotional reactions. So without interaction, there is no group process. Third, a group must have a common identity. Members must perceive themselves as we rather than just I. So, this is what we call group cohesion or belongingness. Example: we are the MA guidance students. There is a sense of identity being the MAGC no? students. Or we are the anxiety management group. Or we are probationers undergoing rehabilitation. So common identity strengthens commitment and cooperation. Finally, a group must have a common purpose. There must be a shared goal or objective. Example, in group counseling, this could be improving coping skills, or it could be enhancing self awareness, or completing a therapeutic task, or solving a problem. So, being no part of the MAGC class, no, at CTU, so that's your common identity. Your common purpose maybe for this subject no is to pass the GC 606 class and to learn the basic facilitation skills. Or in the future, no long-term goals, your common purpose is to pass the licensure examination. The ideal no, size of a group is 5 to 8 members, with 8 being preferable. So why is this important? Now, research and clinical experience show that fewer than 5 members may limit diversity of perspectives, and more than 8 members may reduce individual participation, while larger groups may lead to subgroup formation, mag iya-iya, and reduced cohesion. Again, when we say cohesion, that refers to the unity among group members. So in long-term groups, for example, running 6 months or more, up to 10 members can still function effectively. However, the leader or the facilitator must have strong facilitation skills. So in the board examination, if a question asks more no, on optimal group size for counseling groups, the safest answer is usually 5 to 8 members. Also, take note with children, groups should be smaller because children require more structure, monitoring, and individual attention. In terms of group size and session length, it mentions here that the group size refer to the length of the group session, or how long the group will run. So this means we consider the number of members, duration of each session, total length of the program. So short-term psychoeducational groups may run 6 to 8 sessions, while long-term therapy groups may last months or even years. So in board scenarios, pay attention to whether the group is described as short-term, structured, or ongoing, because this affects leadership style and member expectation. So when we say open versus closed groups, it's another important distinction that we need to consider. Of course, when we say open group, it allows new members to join in after the group has started, meaning nakasugod na og mga sessions, mo-admit gihapon siya og new members. This is common in hospital settings, or even in community mental health centers, or support groups like grief or addiction recovery groups. When we say closed groups, it does not allow new members to join in after the group begins. So, closed groups are preferred in counseling groups, psychotherapy groups, or groups requiring trust and cohesion. Why? Because stability in membership, it promotes deeper trust, stronger cohesion, and safer emotional disclosure. So before facilitating any group, always ask how many members, for how long, is it an open group or a closed group? What population am I working with? These structural decisions are foundational to ethical and effective group practice. Group dynamics help make sense of each member's behavior in context. This means actions that may appear irrational or inappropriate in isolation often make perfect sense when viewed through the lens of group dynamics. Example, a usually passive student becomes vocal in a peer study group because the group encourages open dialogue. This shift is a positive dynamic. For example, in a crisis intervention team, a member who assumes leadership in emergencies might step back during planning phases, no? Which reflects a flexible dynamic based on situational needs. As we deepen our understanding of group work, it is very important that we distinguish three closely related, no, but conceptually different terms: group, group process, and group dynamics. So these are frequently tested, no, in the board examination, especially in situational questions. Group refers, no, to a collection of individuals who share common goals or experiences. No? As discussed earlier, there are criteria, social criteria to be considered, no? What it takes to be a group. Let us emphasize a group is not simply people in the same space. It is individuals connected by shared purpose, shared experience, interaction among members, and there is that mutual influence. When we say group process, it refers to the understanding of the behavior of people in groups, no, and the procedures or methods used to solve problems or make decisions. So, in simple terms, this answers the question, how is the group functioning? So, therefore, in group process, it includes communication patterns, decision making styles, leadership interventions, no, conflict resolution, and participation levels. So for example, if members begin challenging, no, one another openly, no, the group may be in the storming stage from the word storm, no, it's the conflict stage or disagreements, no, might occur. So that behavior is part of the group process. So in the board exam, when a question asks what is happening beneath the surface, such as resistance, cohesion, dominance, or withdrawal, it is asking about group process. So now let us clarify what group dynamics is. No, so it emphasizes, no, the processes that occur between group members. So if group process is the overall functioning of the group dynamics, and no, these are the interactive forces that shape, no, functioning of the group. So these include power and influence, no, roles such as later, no, in the this later slides, roles refer to leaders, scapegoat, gatekeepers, monopolizers. So you would know later on what are these rules, no, the norms, what are expected, no, as the right and wrong in the group. Cohesion is the unity among group members, no, or the alliances or subgroups. So, example here in group dynamics, if one member consistently dominates discussion and others become silent, no, that is a dynamic. If members begin supporting one another emotionally, that is a positive dynamic. So, when analyzing situational questions, ask yourself, what interpersonal forces are operating? No? Who holds influence? What roles are emerging? So these questions pertain to group dynamics. So to summarize, it clearly group, it is the structure who is involved. Of course, granting the four elements of a group. Group process is the functioning. How is it operating? While the group dynamics, these are the forces. What interactions and influences are occurring? So, understanding these distinctions allows us, no, to properly conceptualize cases in, of course, answering the board exam. Here is a no timeline based overview of group development during the 1800s. It focused on the historical context no, that led to the formation of social and counseling groups. So especially it emphasized here the Hull House movement and the rise of group based interaction, especially for marginalized populations. So groups were formed primarily during 1800s for functional and pragmatic reasons, practical reasons. The early purpose of group work during this period was educational, corrective and supportive. So it focused on providing information, instruction, and behavioral correction. So the special attention was given to immigrants, and the poor who were vulnerable and often excluded from mainstream society. So, example here, a literacy class was formed for newly arrived immigrants to teach English and basic citizenship knowledge. So this was not just to educate them, but also to integrate them into American society and somehow reduce behaviors that are against the American society. Settlement houses like Hull House, they held hygiene and parenting classes for impoverished mothers to reduce infant mortality. So the Hull House movement, it was founded in 1889 by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr. So it promoted reciprocal relationship, give and take relationships, and the development of self-determination and self-respect. So social workers and physicians now they began using group structures to enhance self-awareness and psychological support. So empowerment through community participation and personal development is the philosophy of the Hull House movement as a settlement house. So Hull House facilitated discussion groups where women discussed their daily struggles, somehow also sharing their collective problem solving. Others as well, other medical professionals used group meetings to educate patients with similar conditions like tuberculosis to improve their health literacy and their emotional resilience. So the broader social movement of the 1800s, it somehow considered as a dynamic era that saw the integration of insights from psychology, sociology, philosophy, and education. So the momentum came from the pressing need for social reform and expanded educational opportunities. So transform society here is the goal of which they try to improve the well-being and participation of the marginalized through structured group interactions. Example, reformers initiated child labor discussion groups that included educators, laborers, and children, leading to policy advocacy and eventually having that child labor laws. So, youth groups were formed to deter delinquency by fostering discipline, self expression, and vocational training. This somehow is being influenced by the philosophy of human potential and social no, welfare. So the 1800s laid the foundation for modern group counseling and social work practices. The group structure was somehow harnessed not just for instruction but for healing, empowerment, and advocacy, especially for the oppressed. So the Hull House is a landmark example of how group work can transform lives and somehow having that systemic change through education, dialogue, and self-awareness. So the developments in the history of group work in the 1900s, it highlights on the early foundations of group dynamics, no? The use of intelligence testing during World War One, and the subsequent expansion of group guidance and psychoeducation in institutional settings. So Joseph Hersey Pratt, no, a physician, which who is credited, no, with organizing the first formal therapeutic group experience. No, he documented the dynamics of interaction within group settings. No, laying the groundwork for modern group therapy. So, Dr. Pratt conducted group sessions, no, for tuberculosis patients, emphasizing education, emotional support, and patient interaction. So his focus on group processes somehow looked into how people interacted, how they supported one another, and how they learned, no, from shared experiences. It was a groundbreaking experience. That's why he was attributed, no, as the one who is organizing the first formal therapeutic group experience. So in 1910 to 1919, the US military developed the Alpha and Beta intelligence tests, to evaluate the mental abilities of army recruits. No, groups were used through cautiously, no, and with limitations, mainly for psychological screening and rehabilitation. So these group based assessments helped in classifying soldiers based on their mental aptitude, no, and somehow identify those who are suffering from what is known as combat stress, or now termed as PTSD, or the post traumatic stress disorder. So, group therapy was used to treat combat fatigued soldiers, providing them with a setting to process trauma, no, normalize their experiences, and reestablish coping mechanisms. So the post-war years saw significant growth in group guidance, no, and psychoeducational approaches, especially in school and organizations. So psychology and education sectors began adopting, no, group settings for learning, behavior correction, and personal development. So this period, no, marked a shift from purely clinical or correctional use of groups to proactive and developmental uses. So group work became a preventive tool and a medium for life skills education, career guidance, and emotional growth. So the historical progression, no, of group work from the 1920s to the 1930s, emphasizing key figures, no, evolving practices, and landmark developments in the use of groups, no, for therapeutic, educational, and self-help purposes. So this era was marked by theoretical innovations and the practical application of group methods in clinical, social, and organizational settings. So we have here, no, J.L. Moreno's contribution, in which, no, it was published under the pseudonym, no, J.M. Levy Moreno. He introduced the philosophical and theoretical writings that emphasized psychoanalytic and social psychological views. He innovated group work by using theatrical techniques, no, later known as psychodrama. So Psychodrama, no, it's treating individuals with psychological disturbances. So J.L. Moreno shifted the focus from passive therapeutic talking to active participation and enactment, because he believed, no, that healing could occur through role playing, self-expression, and interactive exploration of personal struggles within a group. So example, a patient struggling with unresolved family trauma might enact scenes with group members playing family roles, no? Gaining insight and emotional catharsis in the process. Catharsis, no, is the feeling of relief after being able to um, express, no, emotions that are being held out for a long time. So Moreno's psychodrama technique is still used in modern counseling, no, to somehow develop self-awareness and empathy. So these are the five major theoretical, historical developments from 1930s to 1939. First is there is an increase in group guidance and psychoeducational practices. Now, schools, community centers, vocational institutions began formally adopting group guidance for career planning, personal development, and behavior correction. Example, a school guidance counselor leads group sessions on career choices, study habits, peer relationships, not to equip students with essential life skills. Second is, no, the J.L. Moreno's contribution or influenced on creative techniques and writings that expanded group therapy into expressive forms of healing. He introduced sociometry, a method, no, of measuring social relationships, and group cohesion widely used in education and team building. So later, no, you will encounter um, the term sociometry. So if, for example, if you let your student, no, um, draw different different circles, and you let, no, the student identify his or her classmates, write the names of his or her classmates in those circles. In sociometry, it will look into who among the students closest to the student who made the drawing, because we have the tendency to identify first, no, individuals close to us, then those we considered acquaintances will be in the farthest of our circle. So the nearer the names being identified to the student concerned is considered, no, um, the closer ones in terms of relationship, the quality of relationship, while those names identified at the farthest circle, then those are, no, the more of somehow considered as acquaintance, not as close friends. And we have third, the rise of empirical field studies. Sociologists like Muzaffar Sharif, Theodore Newcomb, and W. E. White, no, they conducted field studies that analyzed group behavior in real world settings. It somehow laid the foundation of social psychology and group dynamics research. Example, Sheriff's Robbers Cave experiment, which somehow demonstrated how intergroup conflict and cooperation develop, influencing educational and conflict resolution. So just, no, an overview, since I have mentioned, no, Robbers Cave experiment. It is a classic field study conducted in 1954 at um, Robbers Cave State Park, no, Oklahoma, in which it examined intergroup conflict, competition, and cooperation. So, Sheriff wanted to understand, no, how group conflict develops, why prejudice and hostility emerge in a group, and how conflict can be reduced. So this experiment is foundational in understanding group dynamics, especially no in guidance and counseling. So in this experiment, the participants are 22 boys, no, they aged 11 to 12 years old, and they have similar socioeconomic background, religion and cultural backgrounds as well. So these 22 boys, no, the participants of the experiment, were randomly grouped, no, they were divided in two groups. So the groups later named themselves the Eagles, and the other group is the Rattlers. So, diba, as we have discussed earlier, a group has their common identity. So in this case, in the robbers experiment, when they named themselves, no, when the group named themselves the Eagles, or the other group, no, the Rattlers, it no emerged, no, as a group already, because they were able to form common identity. So the robbers experiment, in which Sheriff conducted, no, it has three phases of the experiment. First is the formation of the group, what we call as forming stage. The boys were separated into two groups, no, and engage in bonding activities. So ang duha ka grupo, no, group 1 and group 2, they work engage in activities like hiking, swimming, campfire activities. So, with that activity, no, the result of group members sa matag usa nga grupo, they have that strong group identity development. They were able to develop no group norms. Norms is what is expected to be right and not right in a group, and leadership emerged. There is that we versus they no mentality. It began to form. So the phase one of the experiment, it demonstrate group cohesion, no, nagkaiusa ang members in a group, and there is also the formation of their social identity, katong ginganlan na nila ilang grupo, no, the Eagles ang usa ka grupo, ginganlan nila og the Rattlers. Now the second phase of the experiment is the storming stage. Storming stage from the word storm, very chaotic, no? So in the storming stage, it is where conflict, no, begin to rise. So in the second phase of the experiment conducted by Sheriff, the groups were introduced to competitive activities. In sa phase 1 activity, kay kuan pa man to, mura pa man to team building activities, no? In which naglahi-lahi ang duha ka grupo, they were engaged in activities, physically engaging activities like swimming, hiking, campfire, no? Activities. Sa second phase, gi-introduce na ang competitive activities. First is tug of war, kanang magbinirahay no og PC kung gisay makapildi katong madala no nya ang makabira matoy makadaog no, because there is that kung ginsa tong makabira, meaning the group has that stronger force, no, nga ang katong weak nga group no madala nila. Second is baseball activity, and third activity is treasure hunts. So these are the competitive activities that the two groups were engaged in. And of course, kay competitive activities man ni, only one group could win no, the prize. The result of the experiment is that hostility developed, no, name calling and aggression increased, and also stereotyping occurred. So this supported realistic conflict theory, no? The idea that competition over limited resources leads to conflict. So in the third phase of the experiment, here is conflict resolution stage. No? Sheriff introduced the superordinate goals, no, goals that required cooperation between both groups. So kung ang ikaduha sa phase experiment, competitive activities nga naagi yung makadaog sa grupo, sa ikatulo nga phase experiment is both of the groups need to cooperate. So example of the activities that they were engaged in no nga they have to fix a broken water supply. Nya ikaduha, they need to pull a truck out of mud. Ikatulo, pulling money to watch a movie. So with these superordinate goals, the result of the third phase of the experiment, hostility decreased, cooperation increased, and the intergroup friendships formed. So this shows that shared higher order goals reduced prejudice. So maoni ang experiment no of Sheriff, the Robbers Caves experiment. And the fourth is the birth of Alcoholics Anonymous, the AA groups. No, it was founded in 1935, in which it became the first major self-help group in the US, proving that peer-led groups could promote long-term behavioral change and mutual support. So, kaning AA group, these are group of individuals now struggling the same concern. So since AA Alcoholics Anonymous, kaning Alcoholics Anonymous ang mga members ani kay individuals who are struggling no with kanang alcohol dependency. So it's a peer-led group, so meaning ang ilahara pong leader also struggling the same concern. So AA groups meet regularly, they follow the 12-step programs, and they share the same experience no as a healing mechanism. So this model inspired no countless other support groups na natakari narcotics anonymous, survivors no of suicide loss groups, others no they are the grief um, anonymous groups. So AA self-help group no led to the formation of other self-help groups. Then fifth, we have the psychoanalytic treatment no enters group work. In 1930s saw the integration of Freudian psychoanalysis into group therapy, where unconscious conflicts and defense mechanisms were explored within group interaction. So, I think no familiar na mo sa defense mechanisms of Freud kanang denial, suppression, repression, regression. So don't worry, kinaaman mo next semester no na amoy counseling tools and techniques matakol ni siya ang mga basic concepts ni Freud. Freud focused on the unconscious, no? Conflicts. So the group work in the 1940s is an era often regarded as the formal beginning of the modern group dynamics. This period was shaped by World War II, the emergence of influential thinkers, and the institutionalization of group organization. So the global crisis of World War II, it necessitated the rapid movement of psychological and organizational method to manage military, civilian, and institutional needs. So this era produced two major directions in group work. No? First is the theoretical and experimental advancements from key thinkers, and second is the formal establishments of group organizations and institutes. Kurt Lewin, no, the forerunner of group dynamics, is recognized as the most influential pioneer of group dynamics. Lewin also introduced the field theory, that is to understand individuals within the life spaces shaped by their internal and external forces. So later sa later part of the discussion, we will discuss in detail his formula of B equals the function of P and E, meaning the behavior or actions, our actions is a function of the person and the environment. No? This highlight the interactive nature of group settings. Lewin also used the empirical inquiry to solve real world social problems, through cycles of planning, action, and reflection. Then we have Wilfred Bion, the psychoanalytic approach to groups. Bion studied groups from a psychoanalytic perspective, particularly focusing on unconscious group processes. He described the basic assumption groups. We have dependency, fight, flight, and pairing, which can unconsciously impede group task performances. So the example now of Bayon's basic assumption groups in military psychiatric units, for example. Bayon observed that soldiers would unconsciously depend on the group leader. That is what he referred to as dependency, no? Or band together to avoid anxiety provoking discussions. That is what he meant as flight, no? Flight is mulikay. His work laid the framework for therapeutic community models used in psychiatric hospitals and group therapy. And also, we have the establishment of group organizations. We have here ASGPP and AGPA. So, following the insights of Lewin and Bayan, group work was institutionalized. No? Groups were no longer just methods, but became a field of study and intervention. So, the Tavistock Institute in the UK, co-founded by Bayan and others, integrated the psychoanalytic principles with social science to improve leadership, training, organizational behavior, and community rehabilitation. So, ASGPP, American Society of Group Psychotherapy and Psychodrama, it was founded by J.L. Moreno, a pioneer, remember, in psychodrama and sociometry. He established this group during the 1940s, and the very focus of this group is to integrate creative theatrical techniques such as role playing, enactment with group psychotherapy to enhance self expression, healing, and insight. While AGPA, American Group Psychotherapy Association, it was founded by Samuel Slavson in 1943. No, it is strongly rooted in psychoanalytic theory, in which the organization emphasized the therapeutic power of group interaction and the role of unconscious in group behavior. So, the very purpose of AGPA is to promote clinical excellence and training standards in group psychotherapy. So the development of group work in the 1950s is a decade that marked the refinement and specialization of group approaches, especially in the domain of family counseling. So this period saw the integration of systemic thinking, psychoanalytic models, and communication theories into group therapy. So in 1950s to 1959, it is characterized now by um, applied families as systems rather than individuals in isolation. So the family was increasingly viewed as an interdependent unit where dysfunction in one member often reflected or influenced the entire system. We have here Rodolph Drickers. He's a pioneer in family counseling. No, it is built upon Alfred Adler's individual psychology and applied it to a family systems. He emphasized democratic parenting, natural consequences, and goal-oriented behavior in children. So, example, in a counseling session, Drickers might help a family understand that a child's misbehavior is not defiance, but a mistaken attempt not to belong or gain attention. and then help parents respond in non-punitive ways, no, to correct it. Second, we have here John Bell. He initiated the family therapy sessions in 1951. So he is one of the first to formally initiate structured family therapy sessions, in which he viewed family as a social group, applying group dynamics principles, no, to improve communication and resolve conflict within the unit. So example, a therapist following Bell's model might guide a family in a group problem solving task. No? Promote clarity in terms of the roles, responsibilities, and emotional expression among children, no, and parents. Third, we have Nathan Ackerman, Gregory Bateson, and Virginia Satir. They are innovators in family systems therapy. So Nathan Ackerman's contribution is the integration of psychoanalytic theory with systems thinking. She focused he focused on emotional exchanges and unconscious patterns within family interactions. While Bateson, he introduced a double bind theory in communication relevant in families with schizophrenia, no, emphasize cybernetics and feedback loops, which are foundational to systems theory. So the double bind theory of Bateson, na, it occurs when a person receives two or more conflicting messages where one message contradicts the other. The person cannot comment or escape the contradiction. Both messages come from someone important, example, a parent, authority figure, no, or a significant other. Fourth, punishment or emotional withdrawal occurs if the person fails to respond correctly. So, in simple terms, the person is placed in a no win situation. So, classic example here for a double bind theory of Bateson. A mother tells her child, I love you. That's the verbal message. While the non-verbal message or gestures, no, it was spoken maybe in a cold tone, stiff body, and no affection. If the child responds to the emotional coldness, the mother might say, why are you being ungrateful? I just told you I love you. No, now the child is confused. If he believes the words, he ignores his perception. If he trusts his perception, he risks rejection. So he cannot question the contradiction, he cannot escape the relationship, he is trapped. That is a double bind technique. A double bind theory, I mean. No, in our vernacular, most of us experience, especially for mothers, no, ako guilty ko for the double bind theory. If I'm upset but I don't want to show my emotion to my daughter who is a toddler, I am angry, no, but I try to control my anger. Maingon akong anak, Mommy, are you angry? Pero naglagot ko deep inside, I will just say, it's okay, I'm not angry. But he will say to me, no, you are angry because no, your eyes are getting bigger. No, I know you are angry because your voice is loud. So meaning those are two contradictory messages, no? My verbal message does not um, align with my non-verbal cues. So maglibog ang bata. Then we have Virginia Sutter, on which she focused on family communication patterns, self-worth, and congruence. No? She used experiential and humanistic approaches that emphasized empathy, self-esteem, and touch. So, examples here, Ackerman might interpret repeated conflicts between a father and son as displaced hostility stemming from marital tension, because that is not a psychoanalytic perspective, while Bateson's double bind concept might describe a mother telling her child be spontaneous, but then criticizing whatever the child does, causing emotional confusion. Sutter might use a sculpting technique where family members physically arrange themselves in a pose representing how they feel in the family, revealing hidden dynamics and emotions. So the 1950s now marked the evolution of group work into the field of family counseling. It somehow recognized the interpersonal and systemic factors that underlie individual dysfunctions. So, the key milestones in the evolution of group work during the late 1950s and throughout the 1960s highlight its growing acceptance, theoretical expansion, and diversification into new forms such as encounter groups and marathon groups. So in 1958, Helen Driver published her book on group work titled Counseling and Learning Through Small Group Discussion. It provided an academic framework for group counseling, emphasizing small group discussion as a valid and effective method in learning and guidance. Then, in late 1950s, group counseling becomes more common. Group counseling began to be integrated more regularly into schools, clinics, and community centers because it is very cost effective, interactive, alternative to one-on-one counseling. And also, there is a rise in group psychotherapy. It becomes so popular. It gained traction in clinical settings, especially for addressing anxiety, depression, and interpersonal challenges. Quality groups as well, no? W. Edwards Deming is a renowned expert in quality management. He introduced quality circles, a form of small group in industrial settings aimed at problem solving and efficiency. So example here, in manufacturing firm, employees from quality circles to collaboratively identify issues in production and propose improvements, fostering productivity. The major highlight in 1968, it was declared in the New York Times as the year of the group because during 1960, there is the explosion of group formats in which there is a surge in the variety of group types invented, tested, and refined. So the human potential, movement, and counter cultural values spurred creativity, emotionally intensive group models. And also, in the 1970s, it is where scholarly breakthroughs, leadership research, and professional standardization in the field of group work and counseling. So it is the era of theoretical refinement, leadership insight, and standardization. We have here Irvin Yalom. He's attributed with 11 curative therapeutic factors, in which he analyzed the effectiveness of group counseling and psychotherapy. Um, these factors, the 11 curative factors, form the core mechanisms that facilitate personal growth and psychological healing in group settings. So, just an overview because it will be discussed in detail in the succeeding slides. The 11 curative factors we have here: installation of hope, in which in a group setting, when you see others improve, it provides motivation, no, for personal change. And also there is second is the universality. You realize no others have similar struggles. Somehow it reduce your feelings of isolation. Nga dili man di ay ako anay problema. Naa pa man di uban nga mas dako og problema nako. That's the sense of universality. Third is imparting information, no? When group members or leaders provide personal insight, no, and coping mechanisms, you're able to learn from them. Fourth is altruism, no, helping others promote self-worth and a sense of meaning. The fifth curative factor, we have corrective recapitulation of the primary family group, in which the group becomes a safe space to revisit and resolve the family conflicts. They can practice relationship in the group work. Then we have six, development of socializing techniques. No, the group serves as a training ground for developing interpersonal skills. A shy participant, for example, can practice assertiveness, no, in group discussion and receive constructive feedback. Seventh curative factor, we have imitative behavior. By observing and modeling positive behaviors from peers, no, you're able to learn, no, the skill themselves. Then we have interpersonal learning. You gain awareness of how one affects and is affected, no, by others in relationships. Group cohesiveness is a sense of belonging, the trust and acceptance, no, the unity of a group. Catharsis, the 10th curative factor, no, it's the expression of pent up emotion lead to emotional relief and insight. Then we have the 11th curative factor, existential factors. No, the group members um, confront basic human concerns such as death, freedom, isolation, and meaning. So these factors, these 11 curative factors of Irvin Yalom, no, are not isolated. They often interact, no, synergistically. Example, catharsis may arise from group cohesiveness, and interpersonal learning may be facilitated by imitative behavior and universality. The association for Specialists in Group Work, or ASGW, was founded in 1973 as a division of the American Counseling Association, or ACA. No, it promoted responsible and ethical group leadership, developing professional standards, training guidelines, and competencies for group workers. So the contributions of ASGW is they published best practice na guidelines, ensuring group facilitators understand how to assess group readiness, manage conflict, and uphold confidentiality. So train counselors in multicultural group competencies, ensuring inclusivity and sensitivity no, to group member differences. So the key developments in group work during the 1980s, no, to 1989. It is a transformative decade, no, that witnessed the widespread acceptance of group methods, no, the integration of systems theory that somehow shift towards mass accessibility and structured education. So in 1980s, group work for the masses and professional expansion. No? There is the rise in popularity of group work. We have here no AGPA, American Group Psychotherapy Association, in which the editorial leadership na is James Durkin. He published influential articles in 1981 applying general systems theory to group dynamics. Systems theory no views a group as a whole made up of interacting parts. It emphasized patterns, feedback loops, and interdependence. So, example, in a family therapy group, one member's anxiety might reflect tension in the entire family system. The therapist addresses interaction patterns, not just individual symptoms. Another example, a facilitator working with a corporate team focuses on how communication breakdowns in one department affect overall group functioning. Then we have no George Gasta as the president of AGPA, in which he investigated how group facilitators conceptualize and apply their approach. No, his research led to the development of the developmental group counseling model in the 1980s, advocating age appropriate and stage appropriate intervention. Example, a counselor working with adolescents might emphasize peer interaction and identity exploration, while with older adults, now the focus might shift to life review and grief processing. So in 1990s no, to present, there is a flourishing and diversification of group work, in which group work expanded significantly in educational systems. Schools increasingly adopted group intervention for academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning. Then we have the professional standards for ASGW in 1990, no, the Association for Specialists in Group Work, ASGW, no, they released standards for training group workers, ensuring ethical and effective facilitation. So they give emphasis on core competencies such as group planning, multicultural awareness, and evaluation. And also, there is no the rise of diverse self-help support groups, in which the expansion of grassroots and specialized groups tailored to specific life challenges and populations includes grief support, trauma recovery, illness management, no, LGBTQ plus, peer groups, and more. So example here, the diversification of self-help and support groups. No, there is a grief support group in which bereaved parents offer a safe space for shared experiences and learning. None aside from the AA. Also, those individuals who were diagnosed with terminal illness, not the illness management self-help group. And also, no, there is the growth of parenting groups in which parents became a central focus of psychoeducational groups. Topics na include positive discipline, child development, and co-parenting no after divorce, and also business and politics the use of group work models in which they focus on that common tool no in market research and political campaigns, and also giving emphasis no on collective insight and consumer behavior patterns. And also, it is where no quality groups in workplaces now emerge, inspired by the total quality management, the TQM principles. Organizations used group models to improve team collaboration and productivity. In 1960s, no, Father Jaime Bulatao, SJ, is a Jesuit priest, a pioneering Filipino psychologist no, who studied psychology at Fordham University in the United States. No? During his studies and exposure to international religious conferences, he witnessed how group process enhanced interpersonal understanding and reflection, particularly in spiritual and educational contexts. So, upon his return to the Philippines, Bulatao introduced group dynamics exercises to seminarians and students at Ateneo de Manila University, using small group sharing and feedback circles to enhance self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And we have Father Eugene Moran, No, he introduced the inductive method of group processes, which emphasized learning through personal experience, reflection, and self-discovery rather than direct instruction. So, Father Moran is associated, no, with these practitioners: Carmencita Abella, no, Teresita Nitoreda, Jose de Jesus, no, all contributed na expanding human development model in educational and in organizational settings. Then we have PIAPS, Philippine Institute of Applied Behavioral Sciences. It was established as a center for developing human relationship trainers and promoting experiential education. So their key approaches is experiential learning, in which learning through doing, reflection, and feedback; T groups, or the training groups, no, and sensitivity group training groups. These are small groups where participants explore personal behavior, emotional reactions, and interpersonal dynamics. We also have SLE, or the structured learning experiences. No, it is a facilitated activities designed to surface group behavior patterns, encourage personal insight, and strengthen group cohesion. So example, in a corporate leadership seminar, no, PIABs trained facilitators will run IT group activities, training group activities where participants examine communication styles and give each other real-time feedback, no, on how they are perceived in a group. SLEs, or the structured learning experience, like lifeline exercises or trust walks, are used in team building events, no, to develop openness and group cohesion. Task groups, no, are collective units created to perform specific functions or accomplish clear goals. This may include no task forces, committees, planning groups, treatment conferences, or study circles. So they are commonly found in community, business, and educational setting. So, ang task groups, no, very common din na ito nga ma-experience. Example, sa itong eskwelahan, where there is an incoming accreditation, no, the principal or the college dean will have to create task groups who will be taking charge on the different parameters, no? Area 1, Area 2, kinsa ang task group, no, leader, who are the members. So those are examples of a task group. Or committees, no, kung na ay incoming event, who is in charge for the decoration, who is in charge for the food, no, the food committee, who is in charge for the logistics. So those committees, no, are example of a task group. So effective task group leaders are equipped with organizational assessment, no? Asata mas madali, asata mas madugay if we have to do this, no? And also there is the need for training and facilitation skills, since you will be leading, no, your members, and also program development. Also, consultation and evaluation techniques are very important. Example, a school guidance counselor leads a committee planning na a career week. So they have to assess available resources. Train facilitators, no, who will be conducting the symposium or the workshop. No, they need to develop activities and evaluate the program's effectiveness, no, after the event. So the central aim is to apply group dynamics principles such as collaboration, communication, and role clarity, no, to enhance decision making, improve the performance of the group, and achieve concrete, no, specific work goals. Task groups often prioritize swift task completion and emphasize content over process, meaning they focus more on what is done than how it is done. So the potential pitfall is that there is an overemphasis on task content, no, which can undermine group cohesion or unity. No, that may somehow lead to miscommunication, conflict, decreased cooperation, because ignoring group processes like communication patterns, interpersonal climate, no, may hinder productivity, cause emotional friction, and sabotage long-term goals. So example, in a school-based accreditation committee, rushing through documentation without engaging team input may result in overlooked data and disengaged member. The leader must strike a balance between content and process and foster positive group relationships, no, which enhances goal achievement. Example, during a community development project, the facilitator needs to ensure timeliness na, should be met while encouraging equal voice and resolving emerging tension. Task groups should offer members opportunities. Tagaan og kahigayunan ang mga members no to strengthen teamwork skills. Dili mag-iya-iya just to complete no the task. They need to practice interpersonal communication by collaborating among members. And they need also to have that collaborative problem solving. Example, a university, no, university student leaders serving on a student council planning committee gain practical leadership experience by working through agenda setting, delegation, and group decision making. Now we move to a very important framework, no? The summary of key group designs based on the standards of ASGW and ASCA. Now, for board examination purposes, you must clearly distinguish these group types because situational questions, no, often test your ability to identify which design is being implemented. So let us go through them one by one. First, we have task facilitation groups. These groups are designed to accomplish a specific objective or task. No? The focus is productivity and performance rather than emotional processing. These are no what includes the committee meetings, research groups, curriculum planning teams, school improvement task force. So the leader's role here is more structured and directive. Now, clarifying goals, assigning roles, monitoring progress, and ensuring task completion. So, just a board tip, if the scenario emphasizes productivity, deadlines, decision making, and output, the answer is likely task facilitation group or task groups. Next, we have psychoeducational groups. No? These are preventive and developmental in nature. The goal is to provide information, build skills, and promote growth. So, in school settings, these are often called as school counseling groups, no, which may focus on academic, educational concerns, personal social development, career vocational planning. Example, study skills workshops, no? Bullying prevention groups, career guidance seminars. So the leader here is active, structured, and instructional. So if the board exam question describes no, teaching coping skills, stress management, or career planning in a structured format, think of a psychoeducational group. Then we have the counseling group, no? These are focused on interpersonal growth, emotional exploration, and self understanding. So, members here may share personal struggles, there is a need to process emotions and a need to develop insight, no, to improve relational patterns. So the leader facilitates deeper interaction, encourages feedback, and manages group dynamics carefully. So if the scenario emphasizes emotional sharing, self-exploration, and developmental concerns, no, it refers to group counseling group. Then finally, we have psychotherapy groups, in which these are designed for individuals with more severe or chronic psychological concerns, no? Often referred to as mental health groups that may address major depression, trauma, substance abuse, personality disorders. So these require advanced clinical training for the facilitators, strong assessment skills, ethical and diagnostic competence. So if the board exam question involves clinical diagnosis, psychiatric symptoms, or treatment of severe mental illness, no, the group is psychotherapy. So to summarize clearly, task facilitation group, no, gives emphasis on productivity and performance. Psychoeducational groups are preventive by nature. No, it's more on prevention and skill building. Counseling group is more on growth and emotional processing. Psychotherapy group is more on clinical treatment. So notice no how the level of depth increases from task groups to psychotherapy groups. So just to give emphasis na psychoeducation groups according to Gibson's perspective, it emphasizes on cognitive and behavioral skill development. No, it is goal specific and time bounded. So the aim no, of psychoeducation group is to develop cognitive, affective, and behavioral competencies of members. And also, no, the goal is to prevent educational and psychological issues no, through skill building and awareness. Specialization here involves instruction, discussion, modeling, and integration of information. So typically, no, it runs 4 to 15 weeks with weekly, 2 hour sessions, shorter sessions for children. And of course, sessions are structured, combining lecture, no, group sharing activities, and feedback. So, example of psychoeducational groups, we have stress management, no, for college students, or it could be grief and loss education, no, for adults or teens. Then we have study and test taking skills, emotion regulation, coping with divorce, separation, parenting skills. These are examples of psychoeducation group topics. Then we have counseling groups. No, as I have mentioned earlier, it is more on growth oriented. No, it develops interpersonal and teamwork skills. So in here, no, the very purpose is to encourage members to understand no, and engage in group processes and to facilitate personal insight and behavioral change no, through guided interaction. Unlike psychoeducational groups that focus more in instruction, or psychotherapy groups which focused more on treatment with deep psychological issues, and counseling groups no serve members no dealing with developmental or situational concerns no helping them adjust, cope, and grow. So counseling no group serves as a miniature version of the larger society. Therefore, no, it mirrors interpersonal interactions, cultural diversity, social hierarchies, no, and conflict resolution styles. So these simulated environment allow participants to explore their patterns of relating to others, confront biases, and develop new more adaptive behaviors no, in a safe place. Psychotherapy groups, again, no, these are designed to address deep seated emotional, psychological, and interpersonal issues. So, mas severe na nga case, no? These groups go beyond surface level support and instead it aim no, for a more serious psychological change and personal growth. So, the key goals include remediation of psychological problems, no reconstruction of major aspects of personality, and also the need for emotional healing, no, symptom relief, and personal development. So the members of psychotherapy groups no, usually exhibit acute or chronic mental emotional conditions such as mood disorder, PTSD, or the post traumatic stress disorder or personality disorder. So, in psychotherapy groups, no, it is marked with emotional distress and impaired functioning in daily life. So, kung ang counseling group, ang members ana is or the clients of counseling groups, they are still functioning individuals. And we say functioning, they can still take care of themselves. They can still go to work. It's such that they are in a crisis. They are struggling to cope, no? But in a psychotherapy group, impaired na ang ilahang daily functioning, meaning dili na sila ka-take care of themselves. Pasabot ana, they can also na impaired naman ilang daily functioning, they can no longer go to work, no? Because they are disturbed, no, emotionally and mentally. So mas serious na, mas severe na ang ilahang problema. So that's why these clients are not meant for psychoeducation alone or for counseling alone, no? Because they are struggling in terms of their jobs, maintaining relationships, and self-care. No, they impaired their functioning in their daily life. So therefore, no, um, with this kind of population, it is very important that um, the therapist role is no does involve no highly clinical grounded role. So to facilitate insight, no, there is a need to look into the root causes of their emotional blocks or maladaptive behaviors, and also there is the need for guides therapeutic dialogue, no, to help members build new perspective. So in a group for individuals with social anxiety, for example, the therapist may help members to recognize their automatic negative thoughts, reframe their social fears, no, and practice exposures within a safe group setting. Then we have the brief group therapy or the BGT. No, it is a structured, time limited, and goal oriented therapeutic approach, no, designed to address specific psychological or interpersonal issues within a short time frame. So it combines, no, both traditional group therapy with the efficiency required in many contemporary, no, clinical educational organizational setting. So in BGT, no, it typically runs for 8 to 12 sessions with meetings held no weekly. So this format promotes efficiency and focus, no, often in managed care or school-based programs. So again, the structure emphasizes clear, measurable, and attainable goals within the given time frame, focused in this brief group therapy na focus on anxiety, grief, stress management, social skills, or anger regulation. So, of course, group leaders no need to adapt a directive style, guiding discussions, no introducing tools, and managing group dynamics actively. So the advantages now for a grief group therapy, it is very cost effective and time efficient. It provides quick relief or coping tools and is easier for clients na because of their limited availability. So the brief group therapy is ideal in terms of university counseling centers, no? Community mental health centers, hospitals, and corporate wellness. According to the Luca WAC, no? Culturally skilled group counselors need to have that sense of self awareness of their values, biases, and assumptions. No, we need to begin with introspective work, becoming aware of our own cultural worldview, our implicit biases, no, and possible assumptions. Because these internal influences, no, can unconsciously shape how we interpret members' behaviors, their emotions, and their expressions. Example, a counselor raised in a culture that values emotional restraint may initially perceive a highly expressive group member as disruptive or inappropriate. Through self awareness, the counselor recognizes these biases, no, and adjusts their responses to create space for varied emotional expression. Second, the general knowledge about cultural diversity's impact on group process. As counselors, we need to understand how cultural backgrounds shape communication styles, no? Conflict resolution and trust building, no? And of course, emotional expression within a group. Example, in a group with Asian and Western participants, the counselor notices that some members avoid eye-to-eye contact or are less vocal, maghilom-hilom, rather than misinterpreting this. No, you misinterpret disinterest, nga di sila interesado. They recognize it, no, as a sign of respect or cultural norm and create alternative ways, no, for members to contribute, such as journaling, or you have that smaller breakout sessions. And third is our ability, no, to tailor our interventions based on cultural life experiences. So instead of using a Western based metaphor like climbing a corporate ladder, a counselor working with an indigenous community uses nature based analogies, no, aligned with their group's worldview. Example, nurturing a tree to symbolize a personal growth. So cultural competence, no, there is a need to build trust and safety within the group. We need to minimize the microaggression or cultural invalidation, and also there is a need, no, for enhancement in terms of members participation and group cohesion. A culturally skilled group leader, no, understands that group norms and expectations may not universally resonate with all members. So therefore, for some cultures, assertiveness or direct criticism is considered disrespectful or confrontational, no, even when presented constructively. Therefore, a competent group leader must avoid, no, a one size fit all approach. Instead, there is a need to observe members' verbal and non-verbal cues, reflect on whether, no, discomfort with group norms may be culturally rooted, and adjust, no, interventions or communication styles accordingly. The MSJCC model, or the Multicultural and Social Justice Counseling Competencies, no, conceptual framework was developed by Sue Arredondo and McDavis in 1992. So this model provides a foundational guide for counselors to effectively support individuals from diverse backgrounds, no, to address issues of identity, oppression, and social equity. So it is structured, no, around three core competency domains. First, we have self-awareness of the counselor. No, counselors must examine their own personal values, cultural heritage, na biases, and assumptions. It matters because unchecked personal beliefs can unconsciously influence how the counselor interpret clients' behavior or respond to their concerns. Example, a counselor raised in a conservative background might hold implicit biases against LGBTQ plus clients. So through self-awareness, the counselor will recognize these biases and commit to affirming practices and language that validate LGBTQ plus identities. Second is knowledge on clients' worldview. It is very important, no, because misinterpreting cultural behavior can harm rapport. Example, a Filipino adolescent may show hiya, shame, no, or modesty and avoid direct eye-to-eye contact. A culturally knowledgeable counselor won't mislabel this as having low self-esteem or disrespect, but sees it as cultural respect and adapts accordingly. And of course, third, culturally appropriate skills and intervention. Counselors need to equip themselves with responsive techniques, strategies and tools to match the client's identity, beliefs, and context. Because traditional Western approaches may not work for all clients. Instead of using direct verbal processing in a group session, a counselor working with Native American youth, for example, may integrate storytelling, or circle discussions to respect common traditional, no, dialogues and promote healing. So the MSJCC framework serves as a roadmap for ethical, inclusive, and transformative counseling. The professional success of a group counselor depends not just on their theoretical knowledge and techniques, but on who they are as a person. These internal traits build trust, model authenticity, and create safe environment that would enhance emotional and interpersonal growth within groups. First characteristic is courage, the willingness to take interpersonal risks and face group resistance or confrontation. So, example, confronting a disruptive member respectfully, dili, sarcastically, instead of avoiding conflict. Second is the willingness to model the behavior. No, demonstrate desired behavior such as honesty, empathy, and openness. No, you will share personal experience to encourage others to open up. And also, third, we have here presence, being emotionally and mentally present during group sessions. You listen intently, and respond empathetically when a member shares. Fourth, goodwill, genuineness, and caring. There is that sincere concern, and regard for each group member. Following up with a member privately after a tough session. Fifth is the belief in group process. You need to have the confidence in the transformative power of group work. No, encouraging members to trust the process during initial resistance. Six, we have openness, being receptive to new perspectives and feedback. That is, no, as a group facilitator, we need to be accepting and integrating member suggestions into the session flow. Seven is the non defensiveness in coping with criticisms. That is, you accept feedback without becoming hostile, or reactive, responding calmly to a member's critique of the session. Eight is becoming aware of subtle culture issues, that is being sensitive to the cultural dynamics, that you are able to notice that a member from a collectivist culture is hesitant to speak up, and adjust your facilitation accordingly. The nine, we have being able to identify with a client's pain, that a group facilitator should demonstrate empathy by emotionally resonating with the member struggles. You validate their pain of grieving, no, without trying to fix it. Then 10, we have personal power. Your ability to influence others without being manipulative, without being controlling. You inspire change in members through calm confidence and clarity. Stamina, your physical and emotional endurance to manage intense sessions. No? You're able to maintain being calm during a long and emotionally draining session. 12 is commitment to self care. You prioritize personal wellness not to stay effective. You take mental health breaks not to avoid burnout. Then we have self awareness. You know your own biases, your triggers, and values. Because recognizing a personal reaction to a member's story and set it aside no, to remain objective throughout the session. 14th, we have the sense of humor. No, you use appropriate humor to build rapport and lighten the session. It will help ease anxiety no, in a newly formed group. Then we have inventiveness. Inventiveness that is being creative in terms of problem solving and adaptability. You use role play or drawing exercises now when group discussion stalls. Then we have personal dedication and commitment. There is that genuine investment no in members' growth and the success no of the group. That is, as a group facilitator or a leader, we need to spend extra time preparing no tailored fit activities for specific group needs. So these personal qualities no are not just nice to have traits; they are essential traits no for building authentic relationships. Because as suggested, Carl Rogers no, is the proponent of the person-centered um, therapy. He suggested that the more real and genuine the therapist is in the relationship, the greater the likelihood for change. Because effective group leaders know blend these traits with strong ethical and multicultural awareness to create a more meaningful no, and transformative group experience.